The laundromat on Carling Avenue smelled like warm soap and old pennies, the kind of smell that almost feels like home if you're tired enough to let it. It was a Tuesday night in late November, the sort of night that comes down hard on Ottawa. The kind where the cold doesn't just sit on your skin but works its way underneath, into the joints, into the spaces between your ribs. Outside, the city moved fast, heads down, breath clouding. Inside the laundromat, the machines hummed low and steady, and the fluorescent light overhead had a flicker in it that nobody had gotten around to fixing. There were only a few people inside. An older man in a peacoat reading a folded newspaper near the dryers. A teenager with headphones scrolling her phone, waiting. And at the far end of the row of plastic chairs, the orange ones that are bolted together so they always feel slightly wrong for sitting, a woman sat alone. Her name was Audra Pelletier, and she was 37 years old, and she was holding it together by the thinnest thread she had left. She had dark hair pulled back in a ponytail that had started the day neat, and was now listing to one side. There were shadows under her eyes that concealer couldn't quite cover anymore. Her jacket was the same one she'd had since before things got hard. A dark green parka, good quality once, one of the zippers now broken and held shut with a safety pin she'd borrowed from a colleague 8 months ago and never given back. She was watching the machines. Not her machine specifically. She hadn't been able to afford a full load tonight, just the kids' things. The essentials. She was watching the machines the way people do when they have nowhere to be, and nothing to think about except the thing they're trying not to think about. The debt notice. The notice from the school about Wyatt's winter boots. The text from her landlord that she hadn't answered. She had 2 kids. Wyatt, who was 8 and wanted to be a paleontologist, and kept a jar of rocks on the windowsill of their apartment. And Poppy. No, she corrected herself, not Poppy. Her daughter's name was Celeste, 5 years old. Celeste had her father's eyes and her mother's stubbornness and a habit of waking up at 2 in the morning to ask questions like whether fish ever got lonely. Their father had left the picture 18 months ago. Not dramatically, no shouting, no slammed doors. Just a slow withdrawal. Then one day the withdrawal was complete, and it was just Audra, and the 2 kids, and the apartment on the 3rd floor, and the stack of bills that grew faster than she could pay it down. She worked as a medical receptionist at a clinic in Centertown. The job paid well enough for one life, not quite enough for 3. Tonight she'd left the kids with Mrs. Tremblay from down the hall, 81 years old and smelling of lavender, and willing to watch them for an hour while Audra did the laundry. She'd told the kids she'd be back by 9. It was already 10 past 8, and the dryer still had 12 minutes on it. She didn't look up when the door opened. The cold came in first, the way it always does. Then the sound of boots on the linoleum. She registered it the way you register background noise, a layer beneath the machine hum, not worth attention. But then she heard something else. A voice, small, careful. Excuse me. Audra looked up. Standing a few feet away was a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 6 or 7, red winter coat, the kind with toggle buttons, one of them missing. Her boots were too big, probably handed down. She had light brown hair in 2 braids, one slightly unraveling, and she was holding something in both hands. A small mesh laundry bag, the drawstring bunched in her fists. Her chin was tipped up with the particular bravery of a child trying very hard to seem older than they are. "I'm sorry to bother you," the little girl said. She had an accent, not heavy, but there. A rhythm that was slightly different from Ottawa. Quebec somewhere, or maybe further east. Her English was careful, the way English sounds when it's not your first language but you've been practicing. "You're not bothering me," Audra said. She sat up straighter, instinctively. "Are you okay? Where's your—" "My mammon is outside." The girl pointed at the door. Through the glass, Audra could see a woman standing on the sidewalk. She was young. Maybe late 20s, early 30s, in a thin coat dark. She was looking at her phone, though something about the way she was standing made it seem like she wasn't really looking at anything. Audra looked back at the girl. "What's your name?" "Hi, Élodie." Audra kept her voice gentle even. "What do you need?" The girl's grip on the mesh bag tightened. She glanced back at her mother through the window, then turned to Audra again, and in a voice that dropped just low enough to be a secret, she said, "Mayman says we don't have enough for the machine tonight. She says we'll go home and do it tomorrow, but—" Élodie paused. Her jaw did something complicated. "But I know we can't do it tomorrow either, and I have school tomorrow and I need my shirt." She held up the bag. Through the mesh Audra could see the contents. 2 small shirts, a pair of leggings, a pair of socks, a child's gray hoodie with a polar bear on it. That was all. That was the whole load. Audra felt something move through her chest. Not pity. She knew what pity looked like from the inside, had received enough of it in the last 18 months to recognize the shape of it. This was something else. Something that had no clean name. How much do you need? She asked quietly. $2.50, Élodie said. She said it the way children say amounts of money, precisely, as if she'd been repeating it to herself on the walk over. That's the small machine. That's enough. Audra looked at her for a moment. Then she reached for her coat on the seat beside her, reached into the pocket. She did a fast, quiet accounting in her head. The kind of accounting she'd gotten very good at in the last year and a half. She had $11 in her wallet. Not a lot. Enough. She'd figure out the rest of the week the way she always did, the way single parents always do, which is to say, quietly, creatively, and without anyone watching. She pulled out a $5 bill and held it out. Here, she said. The small machine is $2.50, but the dryer cycles are $1.50. You'll dry things each morning, too. Élodie stared at the $5 the way Audra had seen her own kids stare at things they didn't quite believe were real. Like catching a snowflake and having it not melt immediately. I can't, the girl started. You can, Audra said, simply, not making a thing of it. Go show your mammon. Élodie took the bill. Her fingers were cold. Audra felt that in the split second of contact. The girl's hands were cold from standing outside. Thank you, Élodie said. Very formally, very seriously. The way children say things when they mean them more than words can manage. Then she turned and pushed out through the door. Audra watched through the glass. She watched the girl reach her mother on the sidewalk. Watched Élodie hold up the $5 bill and say something. Watched the woman. The mother, look at the money and then look up, back through the laundromat window, toward Audra. Their eyes met briefly. 1 second, maybe 2. The woman pressed her lips together in a way that might have been composure, or might have been the effort it takes to not lose composure in public. She bent down and said something to Élodie, then straightened up and opened the laundromat door. She walked straight to Audra. I'm so sorry, she said immediately. I didn't know she would. She wasn't supposed to. It's okay, Audra said. No, The woman stopped. She was younger than she'd looked through the glass. Pale and tired in the way that has more to do with weight than sleep. She had Élodie's same brown hair, but worn loose, tucked behind her ears. Her coat was a peacoat like the man across the room, but thinner and beginning to pill at the elbows. My name is Simone. No, sorry. She shook her head slightly, correcting herself. My name is Tally Bergeron. I apologize. My daughter, she is. She was very polite, Audra said, and very brave. Tally blinked. She was actually, Audra added. Not easy, walking into a room full of strangers and asking for help. Takes courage. Especially at her age. Something in Tally's face shifted. Not the relief of being let off the hook. Like a door, slightly opened. We just arrived, Tally said. It came out quieter than the rest. 3 months ago, from Moncton. I have a brother here in Gloucester, but... She stopped. The but hung in the air between them, and filled in its own meaning without her having to provide it. I have a position starting in January. At the hospital, orderly. I just have to get to January. Audra understood that sentence. She had lived that sentence. She was in some version of it right now. Come, she said, and moved her coat from the seat beside her. Tally hesitated. Sit down, Audra said again, not as a command, just as an offering. A door of her own opened slightly. Tally sat. Élodie had already gone to load the small machine near the door, carefully counting the coins and the bill with the focused precision of someone who'd been taught that money is not abstract. The old man in the peacoat glanced up from his paper, observed the situation, and went back to reading. The teenager with headphones had long since moved on. I'm Audra. Audra said. You have children? Tally asked. She'd noticed the laundry in the dryer. Children's things visible through the round window? 2. A boy and a girl, 8 and 5. You're here alone tonight, they're with a neighbor. Audra paused. Their dad isn't, she made a small gesture with her hand. A gesture that meant, he isn't in this story anymore. Tally nodded once. She made the same gesture back, a subtle mirror. She didn't need to say more. 2 women in a laundromat on a Tuesday night in November, doing the math on how to get from this week to next week. They sat with that for a moment. The machines hummed. Outside, the wind had picked up, scattering the last of the dead leaves down Carling Avenue in long dry rushes. The fluorescent light above flickered once, twice, held. She's 6? Audra asked, nodding toward Élodie, who was now watching the machine with intense satisfaction, her small fists on her hips. 7 in February. Tally watched her daughter. The exhaustion in her face softened slightly. She started, and seemed to pick her words the way you do when a language isn't quite your own. She is a lot. She feels everything. Everything is serious to her, you know? Even this. She gestured at the laundry machine. She has been worried about the shirt for school tomorrow since last night. I told her it would be fine. I shouldn't have said that. You were trying to make her feel better. Yes, and then she made it fine herself. Tally's voice was complicated. Pride tangled with something she hadn't expected to feel tonight, in public, in front of a stranger. She pressed the heel of her hand briefly against her jaw. I didn't want her to do that, I didn't want her to have to. Audra was quiet. She knew that feeling. She knew it in the specific way of someone who has watched their child take on a weight that should not belong to children, who has stood in the kitchen late at night, adding up numbers that don't add up, and then heard a small pair of feet behind her and turned around to find their 8-year-old standing in the doorway, asking if everything was okay, and said yes, and smiled, and then stood there alone after the child went back to bed and thought, I shouldn't have to lie to him. He should not be looking for signs of trouble in my face. She's going to be all right, Audra said. She said it the way she'd want someone to say it to her, not as reassurance exactly, but as something steadier than that. An observation. A small fact offered in good faith. I know, Tally said. And she meant it even though it was hard. You can know something and still need to hear it. They sat together while the machine worked. Élodie came back and sat on the other side of her mother and asked if she could take off her coat because it was warm in here, and Tally said yes. Beneath the red toggle coat the girl was wearing a long-sleeved shirt with a fox on it, orange, with a white tail. She had a gap in her top teeth that appeared when she forgot to be serious and smiled. She told Audra that her favorite subject in school was sciences de la nature, but she was still figuring out what that was called in English. Science. I think just science, she said, with a look that suggested she found this disappointingly uncreative. She told her that she had a fish at home named Gaspard and that Gaspard was very boring and she loved him very much. Audra laughed. A real one that surprised her coming out. Élodie looked pleased with herself. Audra's dryer beeped. She gathered her things. Wyatt's school shirt. Celeste's 2 pairs of leggings, the socks, the small fleece she wore around the apartment on cold mornings. She folded them into her tote bag the way she always did, quickly, efficiently, the familiar motions of doing a task while her head was somewhere else. She thought about what she had in her wallet. She thought about the rest of the week. She made a decision. She did it without a lot of fanfare, internally or otherwise. It was not a grand gesture. It was the kind of decision that happens quietly, the way kindness often does. Not because you have extra, but because you recognize something. She went to the counter where the coin machine stood and fed in 2 of her remaining bills. She came back with a handful of quarters. She set them on the little ledge above Tally and Élodie's machine. A low shelf, the kind meant for folding. Tally looked up. The wash comes out damp, Audra said, matter-of-factly. You'll need the dryer. 3 cycles at least, to be sure. And there's a vending machine in the corner. She nodded toward the back wall. The hot chocolate one actually works. I know because I've checked too many times. She said it like information. Not charity. Not pity. Just information passed between 2 people who knew what it was like to check the vending machine and do the calculation. Tally looked at the quarters on the shelf. Then she looked at Audra. She opened her mouth and closed it again. Her eyes were bright. You don't have to say anything, Audra said quietly. Honest, she pulled on her coat, worked the broken zipper up to where the safety pin held it. I've been where you are. I'm a little bit where you are now. Somebody was kind to me once when I couldn't explain how much it mattered. That's all. She picked up her tote bag. She gave Élodie a small wave. Good luck tomorrow with the shirt, she said. Élodie waved back with one hand very formal, her other hand still resting possessively on the machine. Like she was keeping watch over it. Audra stepped out into the cold. The wind hit her immediately, the kind that carries winter in it, not just autumn's last exhale. The street was quiet now. A few passing headlights, the distant sound of the transitway. She tucked her chin into her collar and started toward the bus stop. Her boots quiet on the salted sidewalk. Inside through the glass she didn't look back at, Tally sat for a moment without moving. The wash machine churned. The fluorescent light flickered and held. Élodie was saying something. Tally could hear the shape of her voice without quite hearing the words, that familiar rising and falling cadence. Her daughter, who felt everything. Who had walked into a room full of strangers and asked for help because she decided that was the thing to do. Tally reached up and touched the quarters on the shelf. She counted them without meaning to. Enough for the dryer. Enough for the hot chocolate. Enough, tonight, for a little more than just getting by. She pulled Élodie close and pressed her face into her daughter's hair. Élodie, surprised, hugged her back immediately and completely, the way children do when they decide to commit to a hug. All in, no hesitation. What's wrong? Élodie asked against her mother's shoulder. Nothing, Tally said. And she meant it differently than she'd meant it in a long time. Not the nothing of keeping something back, just nothing wrong. Only this. Only right now. Outside, Audra reached the bus stop and sat down on the bench. She set her tote bag on her knees. The shelter blocked the worst of the wind. The number 86 was 7 minutes out, according to the display above her, orange numbers ticking down through the dark. She sat with her hands in her pockets and looked at the street. She thought about Wyatt, who would be up when she got home, probably, still reading his dinosaur encyclopedia under the covers, with a flashlight he thought she didn't know about. She thought about Celeste, who would have made Mrs. Tremblay read the same book twice, and fallen asleep asking what stars ate for breakfast. She thought about Tally, in that thin coat. She thought about Élodie's cold hands, and the single mesh bag of laundry, and the way the girl had held the $5 bill, like it was a complicated thing, because it was. She thought about the woman who had handed her a bag of groceries at the food bank in September. The woman who had looked right at her and said without any fuss, "You're doing a good job, you know. This takes courage." And how Audra had sat in her car afterward for 4 minutes before she trusted herself to drive, because no one had said that to her in a long time and she hadn't known how much she needed it. That was how it worked sometimes. Not a solution, not a fix, just a hand for a moment from one person to another. I was there too. I see you. Here is what little I can offer, and I offer it freely. The number 86 appeared at the end of the street, its headlights swinging wide. Audra stood, picked up her bag, and stepped forward to the curb. In the laundromat on Carling Avenue, the dryer ticked on toward dry and warm. Élodie had fallen asleep against her mother's arm, her fox shirt bright in the fluorescent light, her small face finally still, and Tally sat quietly in the orange plastic chair, one hand resting on her daughter's back, feeling it rise and fall, and she let herself, just for this one moment, stop holding on so hard. The machine ran, the light held. The night outside did its slow work of becoming morning, and in two separate corners of this city, a woman on a night bus with a bag of laundry on her lap, and a woman in a warm, bright room with her sleeping child against her shoulder. Something small had happened that neither of them would describe as extraordinary, because it wasn't. It was just one person saying, "I notice you. I have a little, and you need some, and that's enough of a reason. That's the whole reason. That's always been enough."